Hey, it's Rachel, and I want to talk to you about what to do to make consequences work. So a lot of parents will say to me, what should I do in order to motivate responsible behavior? What consequence can I use to make that happen? So they might say, if my child isn't doing their homework, should I take away electronics? And I think that's an important question because, as you know, if you've seen me speak before or you've seen any of my videos, I do think as parents, we can and should teach our children to be responsible. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. So usually when we talk about this type of consequence, we think that a child is going to associate their behavior and that consequence and do something different in the future. So we want our child to think, last time I didn't do my homework, my parents took away my electronics, so now I'm just going to do my homework. That's not the way it works, unfortunately. What that is, what we know as consequences is a type of, if you've taken any Psychology 101 classes, you'll remember this, it's a type of operant conditioning. And it works really well with animals. And it even works in humans when there isn't this emotion involved like there would be with the removal of electronics. What happens when we impose this type of consequence is a child doesn't focus on their behavior. What they focus on is how unfair it is that you took away their electronics. It doesn't actually teach them to do something different because they're so busy thinking about how unfair everything is. So let me give you a specific example. Let's say you have a child who comes home from school and they're really rude to you. They're being nasty, they're being snippy, and you think, well, they can't talk to me this way. I need to impose some sort of consequence so they know they can't talk to me that way. And I agree completely. It is not okay for them to talk to you about that way. But think about it this way. When your child comes home from school and talks to you that way, there's probably a reason. Maybe they had a really long day where just sitting still was exhausting. Maybe they had a friend that got mad at them, a teacher that got mad at them. They had a test they bombed. Whatever was going on for them that day, they come home and they're taking out their yuck on you. Now, that's not acceptable, but think about it from their perspective. If they take out their yuck on you and then you punish them or you take away something they care about, that doesn't make them say, I need to act nicer to mom or dad next time. What it makes them think is, oh my God, another horrible thing that happened to me today. They just focus so much on the resentment factor or the frustration or anger or sadness factor that they don't learn the lesson. So what do we want to do in this situation? Because we do need to teach them to be responsible. So I have 3 tips for you. The first, and I've said this many times before, I will say it many times again, is instead of focusing on consequences, focus on tools for them to be successful. That child who comes home from school and is rude to you doesn't have the tools to regulate their emotions. They're taking it out on you. Or that child that chooses not to do their homework, they probably don't have the tools to handle the monotony of the assignment or whatever tool they're missing that prevents them from being successful. So always focus on tools as much as you can instead of consequences. If you do have to have a consequence, maybe the reason they're doing something is because there is no consequence. So if a consequence is appropriate, maybe they're eating in the living room because there's no consequence if they don't. When you do have to impose a consequence, make sure you're not imposing it by making them feel worse. When you make them feel worse, so you say, I can't believe you were eating in the living room, or I can't believe you didn't do your homework, or I can't believe you're talking to me like that, they actually focus more on defending and protecting themselves than they do on learning the lesson you're trying to teach. So if there is a consequence involved, make sure you're doing it in a way that's more logical, and this is why I'm doing this, to help you, rather than I can't believe you did that behavior, now you need to pay for it. And the last thing I suggest is when you are imposing consequences, have them be involved with the consequence. So if there's a problem that keeps coming up over and over, maybe you do have a child who isn't doing their homework or is speaking to you disrespectfully, talk to them about it and say, hey, why are you doing that? Let's figure it out and let's find a true consequence together that helps you do better in the future, and have them have some input in the conversation. In the long run, this actually teaches them how to impose their own consequences on themselves that will motivate them, which is a huge factor in raising kids who are internally motivated to make good decisions. So I hope that gives you some ideas for how to handle consequences. If you have any questions, you can always email me at rachel@rachel-bailey.com. I'll see you next time.